Okay, good morning. I'm Chris Wallish, and I'm pleased to be addressing GSAW today to have this opportunity to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Richard Greg Marlow. Mr. Marlow is the Deputy Director of the NOAA NESDIS Office of Satellite Operations and Product Operations, known as OSPO. As the Deputy Director, Mr. Greg Marlow directs the 550-plus person team responsible for the successful operation of 17 of the nation's environmental satellites. Mr. Marlow is responsible for all operations of the NOAA Satellite Operations Facility in Suitland, Maryland, and 2 command and data acquisition stations at Wallops Island, Virginia, and Fairbanks, Alaska. Mr. Marlow joined the federal government in early 2016 after a 25-plus year career at Intelsat. At Intelsat, Mr. Marlow was the Director of Satellite Control Systems, responsible for all mission control systems. He directed the planning, development, testing, installation, and 24/7 operations of all software systems and data center infrastructure used to operate and monitor the health and safety of more than 75 satellites in the Intelsat fleet. Mr. Marlow represents NOAA on multiple national and international committees, such as the Space Ops Executive Committee and the Committee for Operational Processing Centers. I am most honored and would be very grateful if you would help me welcome to GSAW 2018 a great leader in our industry and a person whom I've known for more than 25 years. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Greg Marlow.
Good morning, everybody. Very nice to see everybody. I want to thank Chris for that nice introduction and the committee for inviting me to come talk to you today. I'm here to talk to you about the resiliency of our enterprise at OSPO. And what to me is resiliency? Resiliency is more than systems. I feel like a lot of people, when you think of we think of resiliency, we think of our systems, but we need to think of the whole enterprise, as we were talking about at this GSAW. So I'm very happy to be here to talk about that. For me, resilience of systems is necessary but not sufficient for the enterprise. True resiliency is your entire enterprise, and that's including not just your systems, your networks, but your people. And I think a lot of times we don't think about the people as being part of the enterprise, but that's really key. One of the things I'll mention throughout here, not just your operations folks, your engineers, but your developers, your testers, your users, your partners. And I'm going to use the OSPO enterprise as an example. So just to let you see where I fit into this whole government thing, here's NOAA. And if you look at the box in the red down at the bottom, you see that is NESDIS, Satellite and Data Information Services. I wanted to point out that NESDIS, and I'm sure you're all familiar with the National Weather Service, are at the same, basically at the same level as part of NOAA. So in NESDIS, my group is again in red down below, led by Vanessa Griffin, Office of Satellite and Product Operations. We also have folks in other parallel groups doing architecture, ground system development, and so forth, but we're responsible for all the operations. You can think of us, NESDIS and the Weather Service, we provide all the data and all the products that the Weather Service then uses to do all the forecasting. So we provide the data, they do the forecasts. Also, we're at the same, my group is in parallel with the teams that are developing, building, and bringing the new satellites into operations before we take them over. So here's my team. My boss wanted me to report to her, and everybody else reports to me. So I'm responsible for all of it. I want to point out we do have an IT security team, which is very critical. I'm not going to say much about IT security today because it is obviously incredibly important to keeping the enterprise secure, but there's a lot of other people talking about that, and I'm going to talk about some other things. But I will say, whatever you're paying and budgeting for IT security now, plan to pay more later, because it's going to keep getting more and more expensive. I've been telling my friends for years, they had college-age kids when they had any interest in computers, push them towards cyber because they would never be without a job. So we also, a couple of teams that I have reporting to me, we have the Mission Operations Group doing the operations and engineering, the 2 CDA sites, Wallops and Fairbanks, National Ice Center, I'll mention more about them later, and our product and product development team. So what's our mission? The OSPO mission, acquire and develop accurate, timely, reliable observations. Those are three parts of our resilience requirements: accurate, timely, and reliable. Pictures here, upper right is one of our launch control rooms. In our facility, we can have 2 simultaneous launch teams working towards launch missions. That's one of them. Lower right, we'll see a lot more of that later. That's a picture of the bomb cyclone coming up the East Coast. And in the bottom is total precipitable water. Looking at the different colors are showing the volumes and the parts of the atmosphere. What are our functions? We mentioned we're responsible for our weather satellites, command and control, the ones that NOAA owns and the ones that we're flying for some other people. We operate the ground systems, we operate the antennas, and we produce the products, as I said, the products, derived products, and get the data to the users. Here, I brought a lot of pictures today. I figured this is something that you might not see somewhere else. From bottom left is just cloud cover over Conus. Hurricane Harvey in the middle, you see that one a couple of times because that was pretty popular. GOES 16, taking a picture of Harvey, you can see the eye there. And on the right is our new Satellite Operations Center. We completely revamped that, and that's be part of our infrastructure investments I'll talk about. Why are we doing this? Protecting the nation. It's very critical. I think we all know this. The better the forecasting, the more warning people can get, the better they can plan, protect things, protect themselves. Sometimes it's just a matter of getting out of the way. But also, we're also a major contribution to the economy, not just the saving of lives and property, but also, we talk about the NIC, supporting the maritime economy with showing where they can get through ice in the Arctic and the Great Lakes. So here on the left is a couple of pictures from one of our polar satellites. You can see the wildfires on the top left on the west coast, the algal bloom over at Lake Erie, which is important for environmental tracking. On the right, again, Hurricane Harvey and Hurricane Maria below that. Some of the pictures are true color, some are enhanced. The colors are typically assigned to give you so that you can quickly see some information. In this case, for Maria, it's for the wind speeds. What's the impact? As I mentioned, climate, weather disasters are extremely expensive. What I'm showing here is just for the first 9 months of 2017. There were, it looks like I had 16 major events. Each one cost more than $1 billion in damages. This is droughts, hurricanes, tornadoes, hailstorms, severe weather. And this also, and when you add in the hurricanes, which were extremely damaging, just in those first 9 months, costs exceeded $300 billion. So how do we do this? Most of you are familiar with satellites, but I just want to point out the three, what we use them for. We have our polar orbiters, which giving us 2 full Earth coverages per day. We have a morning orbit and afternoon orbit, so we get more coverage. And that's typically used for the longer range forecasting, 3 to 7 days, plus the polar coverage and environmental tracking. The GEO satellites, like communication satellites, are parked at the same spot, and we get the same coverage all the time. So that's used, and actually the latest series is giving us even more coverage, more data. The Harris folks talked about that yesterday. I think 60 times more data than we were getting before. So you get a full image every 10 minutes. But this is, but it doesn't cover the poles. It's typically used for short-term weather forecasting and storm warning. Over on the right, the deep space, we have them satellites at the Lagrange points. Lagrange point, if you don't know, is where the gravitational pull from the sun and the earth is balanced so that you can keep satellites out there, typically for some sun monitoring, solar weather, and so forth. So here's the NOAA observing system. You can see we actually have GOES east and west out there. We'll be launching a new GOES. We're hoping to launch the next GOES satellite tomorrow night. It will become GOES west after about six months or so. You can see some of these satellites we are co-owned, or we are sharing facilities or so forth with other countries and partners. Now here's the global observing system. This is not every single weather satellite in the world, but this is a bulk of them. You can see there's a lot more out there. A lot of them we're not using data from them. One of our goals is to get access to more data from more sources, including some of these other satellites and commercial satellites, and we're working on that. Here's our newest satellites. These mostly became operational since I started with NOAA April of 2016, and suddenly had all these new satellites coming online, so it was very exciting. I mentioned GOES-R, actually GOES-S should be launched tomorrow night. GOES-R became GOES-16. Let me go to the next one. So here's our enterprise. We talked about different parts of it, but this is a overall picture. Satellites bringing in data, coming through our antennas, not just ours. We have some help from NASA at White Sands coming through TDRS. We're using McMurdo down in Antarctica, all coming into our main facility in Suitland, Maryland. And the data is then processed. Some of it is direct support, goes out directly to the customers. That'd be things more like SARSAT, search and rescue, GeoNetcast, and there's also a thing called GRB, GOES, I forget what that stands for, but it's the GOES data that comes down from the older satellites and then bounce back, some processing, bounce back up to the satellite and then sent out directly to users. So you can see the data processed, products, goes to the users and to the archive, because we keep all this stuff, as the Harris guys were talking about with their mimicking some of the storage and experimenting with cloud. Our infrastructure, we made some pretty big investments. I'll get to those in a little bit, but this is where we're located around the country. I mentioned Suitland already as our prime site. NOAA Satellite Operations Facility. College Park is where we have our products folks. We just have a small part of that building. That's Weather Service uses most of it. Boulder and Asheville, we share facilities with some other folks at NESDIS, but that's where we have our data storage. Fairmont, West Virginia is our prime backup site now. Wallops and Fairbanks we mentioned already for antennas. And we also have some services from others. We have some contracts with Norway, KSAT, to use their antennas at Svalbard. So here's our, I mentioned the satellite-based services, but I just want to give you a picture of our terrestrial network. So it's a pretty big network going across the country, lots of stuff up and down the east and west coast. We have a direct interface to Weather Service for the GOES data, real-time products or near real-time products going out to most of the users through the PDA, product distribution and access. I mentioned the long-term archive. We also have some cloud services, a big data project that's ongoing. I mentioned some of our recent achievements. We're very proud of these basically generational game-changing satellites. GOES-16 is already up there. GOES-17 we hope will be tomorrow night. JPS-1 became NOAA 20. If you're wondering about typically when the satellite's on the ground, this guy has a letter designation, and once we put it in the air, it gets the number. You can see we're off by one. GOES-R is the 17th letter of the alphabet. I think we lost, we want to keep it that way because we lost GOES, I think it was F, way back in the day. And that's why they're off by one. So now I'm going to show you some of the products and pictures from, you can see some of the things that we're using to support the weather forecasting. So this is kind of my favorite because this is rare. Hadn't seen 3 hurricanes simultaneously in the Caribbean, South and Atlantic there that close together. So that was a rarity. And then GOES-16 was there pretty much just in time with the high resolution photography to take this picture. So here's Katia, Irma, and Jose. So this is after Harvey's already come through and devastated Texas, and then these 3 came along right together. So this is showing ice in the Hudson Bay. I mentioned the National Ice Center. See the cloud cover coming over You really can't see the ice changing much, but this is really critical. Hudson Bay, Great Lakes, and the Arctic for maritime ships, knowing where it's dangerous, where they can get through, and this is a very big impact economically for them. So you can see the wildfires in Utah and New Mexico. When the loop starts over, you see the cloud cover coming through, but then you can see the fire starting in the lower and middle left. This is important information that we can then share with local firefighters and others to help pinpoint where things are, where things seem to be moving, and we're working on other products to give them more information about that. Upper level vortices. I don't have much to say about this because I'm not a meteorologist. The meteorologists love this stuff. I just think it's pretty cool the way the swirling around and the different patterns, and it means a lot to the weather guys, but for me it just looks nice. So I thought you might enjoy it. So, I mentioned the cyclone bomb cyclone, powerful nor'easter. So this is a really good picture to see you can see the impact of the whole thing. At this point, the center is up past, towards New England, but you see it swirling, pulling all the cold air down, and you can also see the leftover ice and snow at this point all the way down to almost to Florida. But this storm actually had snow in Tallahassee for the first time in 30 years. Blizzard conditions in the Virginia coast by the ocean really hammered our facility at Wallops. They had more snow than they'd ever seen, but they got there and got to work, kept things running. There's another view from the bomb cyclone from 16, again with giving the forecasters some different views of the data, different stages of it. And they take this new information and start plugging that into models to improve the forecasting over time. And brought this one also, again, the same bomb cyclone, but this is NOAA 20. We had just launched it, so this is a little bit closer view. This is a polar orbiter and was just first time using the infrared. So this is a new instrument that we haven't had before, the LightningMapper. So if you watch, this is over about 3 days. But we had one instrument that could see lightning on an earlier satellite, but this is the first time we've had it on the GEO